Hi, Julie. How are you?
I'm great, Nikki. This is exciting. We're about to take over.
Yes, so excited to be taking over South Bay Mommies and Daddies. Hi, everyone. My name's Nikki, and I'm from Mabel's Labels. Tonight, we'll be doing a takeover with South Bay Mommies and Daddies with a very special guest, Julie Cole. Julie Cole is the co-founder of Mabel's Labels, and we'll be in conversation with her tonight to talk about managing kids and work all during the pandemic. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Julie Cole. Hi, Julie.
Oh, hey, Nikki.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm great. This is going to be a great conversation because you know what? Like we're all trying to work from home. We've got kids getting underfoot, so I think there's a lot. We're all in the same boat here, struggling, right?
So true. And I think we're all really excited just to get talking about it and so happy to be here. So thank you. Julie, I do know a bit about you. I know that you started Mabel's Labels 17 years ago after your son's autism diagnosis. You have six kids, so
True.
clearly you're used to being productive while having kids all around you all the time. Can you start by telling us a little bit about what that was like, especially in those early days?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, let me give a little bit of background. So, as you said, we started Mabel's Labels 17 years ago. We started for a couple of reasons. And I do think for any of you mom entrepreneurs out there, you got to know your why, right? So, we had sort of two whys. So, the first reason was that we noticed that there was a product missing from the marketplace. We were sending our kids off to daycare and going to play groups and losing things. We were using permanent marker and masking tape to label our kids' belongings, and it just wasn't cutting it. So we thought we might create something a little bit better, and that's what we did. So our labels, of course, are dishwasher safe, microwave safe, washing machine safe, UV resistant. So that was it. Really, we were filling a gap in the marketplace, and then actually, as you mentioned, my eldest child has autism, and that was the second why to this story. And I know a lot of you probably have had similar experiences where your family situation has caused you to pause and pivot, and that was the case for me. So at the time, my son, who was just turned 3, was diagnosed with autism. He already had two younger sisters, so I was a pretty busy mama at that point. And I was thinking the traditional workforce wouldn't necessarily work for my family anymore. I was a lawyer, and I thought I just needed the flexibility that entrepreneurship would provide. So at that point, I turned to my co-founders and said, "Okay, guys, we've had this great idea. I think now with my family situation might be the time that we kind of go for it, launch, and that's what we did. And we haven't looked back. It's been 17 years, and I can tell you, like it was in those early days. What I did learn is that moms can be super productive in very strange places and at very strange times. We can change the world as we're changing diapers. We can make business plans during play dates, and we can accomplish a lot. I know in those early days I can remember very well um, making labels in the basement until 2 a.m. And then at the time I was pregnant with my fourth, and then I'd get up at 6 a.m. and have the day with the kids, and try and make labels and try to market labels and do all that jazz. So yeah, good times. But I think if anything, the moms are probably best prepared for this pandemic because we're used to just getting stuff done in impossible situations.
Changing the world while changing diapers. I love that. Thank you. That's an amazing story. Now that we're all here and we're all trying to manage, our online learning that we're all doing with our children, running our businesses at the same time, kind of what you touched on there.
Yeah.
How can we create a space to be able to do all of this?
Yeah, look, it is tricky times. And I know for any of the moms who've been working at home or the dads who are working at home, and you're used to your people being gone all day, it depends where you're living, right? Like where we are right now, the kids are home from school, they're doing online learning. So, I'm quite used to having an empty house during the day. Those of you with little ones, I can tell you this, you're in the hard part. Everyone says bigger kids, bigger problems, but I can assure you it's way easier. My youngest is 11 now, and it does get easier. And certainly teenagers can bring their own little issues to the table. I mean, I've got all these teenagers now who are home and not seeing their friends and that sort of thing, which is problematic in its own right. But you know what, when they're little and they're getting underfoot, it can be super tricky because they do, demand a lot of attention. So for me, what we've done to create space is I've really just kind of looked at the house, what works, what doesn't. If you have, I mean, I have 6 kids. There are no spare bedrooms in my house, but if you happen to have a spare bedroom, it's a great way to utilize that space. I've got a designer friend, Sonia Gilmore, and she has been spending all of her time turning spare bedroom closets into workspaces with little desks and whatnot. So that works. Also, you've got to think about what kind of a learner your child is. Like, if they can gather with other siblings, like my kids, they love to just sit at the harvest table and all work together. They pop in their earphones, they get on their Zoom calls, they do whatever, and that works for them. But if you have a child who gets distracted easily, you're probably going to have to find a space with a door. And I do have one like that too, a guy who is ADHD. And I mean, this guy can find distractions wherever. I mean, talk about squirrel. So that can be, depending what kind of learning you have, that can be hard too. The other thing that I try to do, and this might not be possible, but it's something to consider, is I try not to have my kids do their schoolwork in their bedrooms. And I've always been a big believer that bedrooms are for sleeping. When they were little, I didn't really have toys in there. I didn't want them playing in there. I wanted them in there and I wanted their brains turned off. And I just wanted them to associate that with sleeping. Because let's face it, we just want our kids to sleep at night. How are we supposed to build our empires if they're awake all the time? So bedtime to me was taken very seriously. Besides which, with so many kids, all of my kids shared rooms. So it's not like there was a lot of room for even dressers in some rooms. So yeah, if you can try and keep their sleeping in a separate room to their schoolwork, because often what they'll do is lie down and they'll think about their schoolwork and what needs to get done, and that could be stressful and it can hinder their sleep. So I think a couple of things: assess your space, talk to your kids about the function of the space now and how that might be different to how you've traditionally used the room. Maybe your dining room is no longer for dining. You have to be able to work with the house that you've got, be flexible, think outside the box, and yeah, really just know what kind of learning you have and what environment is best for them.
That's awesome. You know, the word that comes to mind is resilient. We've had to all be resilient and figure it out and do what's best for our families and, stay within the bubble of our household and get it
Totally.
done. And, so many of us are doing it right now. So that's great advice. Thank you. I love the focus on bedtime, being bedtime and that being like their special space to kind of turn off their minds. That's fantastic advice.
Because
So
really sleep is so crucial for their wellness and their ability for their little brains to work and not be moody. And it's so hard because we're all in that same space all day long, like we're getting on each other's nerves, right? So if
yeah.
we can just try to keep the sleep habits and good sleep hygiene, that's really going to be impactful.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. So I've heard you speak about how managing expectations and strong communication is so key to families for them to function through difficult times. Can you elaborate a bit more on that and what you mean by that?
For sure. So I think, when we're talking about managing expectations, I think first of all, we got to look at our own. Like, are we, it's okay for us to adjust our expectations at this time. It's really okay. It's okay for them to be low. Some days I've been feeling like my expectations are so low I could trip over them. And that's okay. These are different times. These are hard times. But we also have to manage the expectations of those in our family. And I find that the best way to do that is to make sure that you're clearly communicating what your expectations are and communication is the key. I think for families who are all in the same space all day long, everybody's trying to be productive and get things done. I think the best thing to do in the morning is have you a group huddle. It's like you're at work, right? You have that group huddle and you find out what everyone's kind of needs are for the day. So for instance, if I'm doing a Zoom call at a certain time, if I have a media interview, if I have something where I want quiet and I want all the Wi-Fi, I have to let the kids know, okay, you guys, no live streaming between 1 and 2, and no, like, so let them know what the expectations are, and also know what their needs are. I also am a firm believer in nonverbal communication plans. So, for example, if you have to get something done, you're in your office or you're in your space, you've got to have a way to just notify your children about how accessible you can be to them. So, obviously, you've done the huddle in the morning, so they have a basic outline of the day. I've got like a green sticker means come on in, it's free for all, you're welcome to come see me anytime. Yellow means come on in, but be quiet, I'm probably on a call or something, just be a little bit alert. Red means the house better be on fire or your brother better be drinking bleach under the sink. That's got to be, pretty important. So I think communicating with our families and our children around expectations is important. But I also believe in communicating with your partner so that, there's maybe a little more democracy. We know statistically that women are still carrying a lot of the emotional and physical and mental load of parenthood. We know that's factual. So if you're struggling, if you're having a hard time, make sure you're communicating with your partner around what your needs are, when you need that to be able to tap out, who's going to help with which subjects with the school. You got to divide that stuff up if you have a partner. And communicating with the school. I got to tell you, that first round when we had the kids online learning we started in March here. And I've got my youngest little guy, ADD, ADHD, gifted, and LD. Very interesting learning profile. Try homeschooling that. So he was that kid who needed somebody kind of with him, beside him, keeping him focused all the time. And it was very difficult. Luckily, the older siblings were all around, and 2 of them were actually sent home from university because of COVID. So I actually assigned them all to a subject with him. So each one of them was responsible for a subject. See, sometimes this big family thing pays off. It was divide and conquer. But I will say that I communicated with his school and his teachers, and I said, look, we will do the spelling tests, we will do the math assignments, we will do what needs to be done, but I can tell you, we are not going above and beyond. We are not doing phys ed assignments. Religion, we've tapped out. And if you have one of those things where they can do a virtual tour of the San Diego Zoo and then write a paragraph about an animal they learned something about, absolutely not. I was not doing it. I didn't have the capacity. With my funny little learner, with having to run a business, with all the kids around, with everything going on, I didn't have the capacity, and that was okay. And I reached out to the teacher, I reached out to the school, I communicated what we could get done. They worked with us, they understood. They are also understanding because often teachers are at home trying to teach your kid while homeschooling their kids. So don't be afraid to set boundaries and understand what your capacity is and communicate that to the school. So again, that communicating expectations with your children, with yourself, lowering them, with your partner, and with the school or anyone else who you're interacting with and somehow, is a part of you surviving this craziness.
Yeah, I love that the honesty that comes with what you just said too. How many people out there are afraid to say that to their teachers, are afraid to say, this is my capacity and I've hit the limit,
Right.
So I think that's just such great advice to help people understand that being honest about those situations is so helpful in the long run. It's helpful to yourself, your household, and your child as well. So thank you for
Yeah.
that. That's
And
just
so
great
many of
advice.
us, if anyone's going to understand, we're all going through it, right? And I just think there's no, if you're not coping, or if the kids are driving you crazy, or if you need to If you need to say, you know what, no, we're not doing virtual dance classes anymore. I can't do virtual what, like if you're zoomed out, if you've got Zoom fatigue, it's okay. I think we just need to remember there's no shame in our game. We're all in survival mode.
So true. Survival mode, absolutely. I also wanted to mention, having independent kids. You did mention how they were helping with subjects with your youngest child. So having that independence, it helps families through those difficult times. So you specifically, like, how did you encourage that independence among your own children?
Right. Well, I think in a lot of ways, there are six of them, so um, you kind of need to, like I learned pretty early on the investment of getting them to do things themselves. I think with kids, it's that short-term easy is long-term hard. So if you're like, okay, well, you know what? I'm just going to do their shoes for them, or I'm just going to zip up their coat. You're going to be zipping up their coat till they're 12, right? Like you do these things. I had this friend once who didn't like mess and she didn't like her kids in her kitchen. And, so her kids would just be like, I want a glass of milk. And she'd go get it for them. And now her kids are like in their early 20s and they bark like orders to her to go get them a glass of milk. And she does. I'm like, no, you let them in the kitchen. You let them be independent. You let them make a mess and then you let them clean it up. So, I think it's important to let them make these little mistakes. And I think, it is really just an investment. And I think it's very hard for us because sometimes you're just like, it's just easier if I do it for them. And I think we have to practice this too with seeing our kids do online learning. Sometimes I'll see my kids struggling and I want to jump in and I want to fix it and I want to save them and I want to rescue them. And I think we need to sit back and just give them time, let them figure it out, let them sit in their struggle for a little while. And you find too, like it's okay. Parents are always reluctant to say no to their kids. It's okay to say no. I always say to my kids, no's are free. Go ahead, go ahead and ask. Like you don't have to give them a snack 20 times a day. You can say no. The kitchen's closed. Guess what? I mean, we all complain about having to pack lunches every single day, but now people are getting snacks for the kids 50 times a day. So you know what? It's fair to say no. We can't do it. We have to get these things done in the day. Mommy has to be productive. But you can make them independent by putting snacks in a place that they can reach. Put out the fruit bowl in a reachable spot. Their water bottles so that they can help themselves. They can refill their water bottles. Do things to set up your space so that it's accessible to them and they don't rely on you to do everything for them. And I do have some friends who have been like, I can't deal with the kitchen situation. The kitchen's got to close. And what they do is they do pack their kids their school lunch, and then they have that even though they're at home. And if they finish it all by 10 a.m., guess what? That's a natural consequence. The kitchen's closed. You don't get anything till, late afternoon or dinner time. They'll quickly figure out to space out their snack eating. So, I think it's really important to just try to do things to foster this independence because it'll make you allow you to be more productive. So I think, all in all, by creating like a good space, by communicating, by managing expectations, by encouraging independence, these are all the things that are going to help us be productive and get work done while we're at home while kids are underfoot. And I think I would finally want to say that we do need to give ourselves a break and give each other a break. Do you remember in the first round of COVID, and all the kids were sent home, and everybody's homeschooling, and the hairdressers were closed, and we were all like, "Oh, my roots are showing. My roots are showing." Well, my friend Ron Tite said something very interesting, and he said, "Yes, our roots are showing, but it's more than that. Our roots are showing, as in." We're on a Zoom call and a kid cries out for something or comes into the screen, or we've got a messy shirt on, or we've spilled something, the fact of the matter is all of our roots are showing, and we're all in that same position. So let's just remember to be patient with our kids, be patient with others, and be patient with ourselves.
Oh, thank you. So true, as my roots are showing.
Mine are truly showing. I've been trying to keep my chin up.
Yeah, same. Oh, Julie, thank you so much for this. Again, this is Julie Cole, co-founder of Mabel's Labels. I'm Nikki from Mabel's Labels. Thank you so much, South Bay mommies and daddies, for this takeover. We've had a great time and learned a lot. So I hope you have too. Thank you very much.
Okay.